All right, once we open up TinkerCAD and you sign in, I would just advise sign in with Gmail or whatever email you have. Then you can select Create New Design, and then you see the work plane. So TinkerCAD is amazing because of its drag and drop interface. So let's start by you can pick a cube and you drag your cube. Note that you can change the color of your cube here, or you can make the cube into a hole. We'll see that a little later when we start grouping shapes together and when you start subtracting volumes from one another. So let's take a cube and then let's take a smaller cube. And one of my first tasks I like to give people who are learning TinkerCAD is to make a hollow box, a box that has volume taken out of it. So first off, let's edit this grid just because I'm teaching in the United States, not sure where you're at right now, but you can change from millimeters to inches and update your grid. Something else you can also do in Edit Grid is change the presets. So let's say you have one of these specific 3D printers, like at the school I work at, we do have the 5th gen as well as the Replicator Plus. So you can make sure that your shape will fit on the print bed of your 3D printer if that's what you intend on doing. So you can change dimensions by typing them in if you want to be really precise, or you can also drag the little white boxes on the different axes, and you'll notice we've got a length and a width and a height for each box. So you can edit all of those. Now I'm going to undo that, because as you'll notice, as I was dragging those little white boxes, what was happening was the shape was getting expanded or squished. If you do want to alter the volume without, altering the relative dimensions of the length, width, and height, you can hold down Shift on your keyboard as you drag a corner. Actually, I've never tried. Oh, the top one works too. Hadn't tried that one yet. So that will help you change your shape's overall size without changing the relative width, length, and height. So let's try this. Let's go up to 2 by 2 by 2. So we've got a nice volume of 8. And then we're going to make it hollow. So let's make this one a little less than 2. And then what we can do is, my favorite thing is the Align tool. So you're going to push down. Let's assume that you're on a mouse pad, because I think that's what most people have. If you do have actually a mouse that you can click on, that would be way, way easier. So I would advise you use that. And that would be like the left click versus the right click. And you can do some experiments with that. So I click and let go. You'll see that Shapes 2 is selected in the top. So that means now I am editing both of these together. And you'll see that these little symbols at the top now allow me to click on them. Let's see what happens when I don't have two shapes. I cannot group anything. I cannot ungroup anything. I cannot align anything or mirror anything because I don't have anything selected. It would not know what I'm trying to group or ungroup. If I have one thing selected, well, I could mirror it. Now for a box, that's not going to be very interesting. Let's save the mirroring for later. If I have two shapes, I could group them, meaning they would relatively be together. Now I can't ungroup something unless I already have a grouped thing, which is why ungroup is not allowing me to click on it. I could click on align, which I love. So we'll align the x-axis, the y-axis, and I'll align the z-axis to the top because I want the box to be hollow from the top looking in. Now, once I've aligned x, y, and z to the top, then I can group. So I've selected group, and you'll notice I can hold down Control as I hold down Control, I click with my thumb, and then it allows me to change my view on the work plane. Something else that you can do is select the box on the top left corner, but I just find that that's a little more tricky to select. So it's just much better to hold down Control, click, and rotate around. And that way you can get different views of your object. So from here, let's see what would happen if I wanted to go back and perhaps change the size of the interior of my box and then regroup them. So for that step, I would click Ungroup, which gives me a hollow section. And then from here, I could, type in and change the dimensions. So let's say I decided instead I want to have a very consistent 1/4 inch difference on each one. So in that case, I could edit my dimensions and then hold down Control. Now you'll notice it's no longer aligned with the top. So at this point, I do need to realign the tops. And then looks like it also got a little uncentered. So then I can group the two shapes, and you'll notice now I have a box where all the edges are just a 1/4 inch on each side. So that is what the best way to do grouping and ungrouping is with the Align tool. Now, something we haven't seen yet is the mirror aspect. So let's mirror maybe with one of these shapes. So we've got the roof, and we can click on mirror. And from here, if we mirror this way, nothing really happens that much. But if we mirror perhaps up on a different axis, you see that it flips it around. If we mirror that way, nothing else happens because it is symmetric about that axis. Let's pick perhaps the, what would be most interesting here? Perhaps the heart. So we select the heart, and then from there we can use the mirror tool. And this is really the most interesting one. That just flipped it 180 degrees, which brings me to rotation. So for rotation, you don't just have to use the mirror tool. You'll notice there are 3 little arrows that show up when I have shapes. So I could use this, this drag and drop rotation, or I could rotate it about this axis, or finally my third axis. You'll notice that the number also pops up, so feel free to type in the precise angle that you do want to rotate it. Just some other things I'll point out on TinkerCAD before I call this session finished is you could select the upper left-hand corner, and that's where you can rename it. So I can just say, learning the ropes. I would advise that you do, title what you're making, what you're actually making, because they often give you some bizarro name. And then just so you know, for 3D printing, the final step for that would be to click export, and then you would export it. For my 3D printer, it would be an STL. I have never used the OBJ or the JLB, but it's very possible that that would be useful as well. You can also 3D print from the website itself, but there are many 3D printers now that are not very expensive. So if you are really into this, I would advise you get your own because you will learn a lot from it.